I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak to the NDP's motion today in order to offer an alternative perspective and hopefully some clarity to the matter at hand. Let me begin by commending Canadians for being resilient, extremely hope-filled, and dedicated to the betterment of our country. And while many are like Michael, who runs a small local coffee shop in my riding of Lethbridge, faithfully, he serves our community despite the personal hits that he's taking right now. Or like Jamie, who is balancing her job at a salon while homeschooling her daughter. There are others who sadly have lost their job by no fault of their own. Many restaurants have had to close their doors, gyms have had to fold, and many employees sadly have lost their livelihoods altogether. No doubt, the government's response to the pandemic has hurt many people. The country is facing challenging times because countless individuals are having to deal with significant and unexpected obstacles. Where appropriate, it is important that we as parliamentarians work to give small businesses, workers, and industries the help they need to make it through this pandemic, which is why Conservatives have consistently put forward amendments that would strengthen the programs that are being offered to Canadians. A few of these suggestions have been taken, but other times, for example, with the failed rent subsidy program, our suggestions were altogether ignored. 6 months later, however, we see that the government is willing to come back to the table, take our amendments, and implement them because they know that they're good ideas and they'll serve Canadians well. Sadly, when the government puts its ego before the people, Canadians get hurt. That said, even though the government can play a role that is helpful for a short time, it is important that historic events like the pandemic are not exploited by entrenching policies that would actually harm society down the road post-pandemic. I'm talking specifically about the socialist policies that the NDP have put forward and that are being discussed here today. Allow me to elaborate. If we look at countries that have enforced equalization policies and societal restructuring for the common good, or so said, we can easily see these types of initiatives should not be replicated. Think of the Soviet Union, Cuba, China, North Korea, just to name a few. It is important that we take a comparative look at other societies that have been governed by socialist regimes. They have never been successful. Insanity, the very definition of insanity, is trying the same thing over and over and over again in hopes that a different outcome will be accomplished. Though socialism might seem idyllic at the beginning, after a period of time, the people end up suffering at the hands of their so-called caregiver, the government. They end up in bread lines, they end up with food stamps, they end up dependent on the government for almost everything. Their dignity is robbed from them. They are turned into victims dependent on their exploiter. These people are promised free social programs, free education, free health care, and government paychecks, but they end up impoverished and with very little freedom, while simultaneously those in the upper class, government leaders, remain fat, well-fed, and living in luxury. These are the facts, and we must not overlook them when we discuss matters like the motion at hand. Now, of the main features of this motion, one of the main features of this motion is that it aims to crack down on those who have been profiting from the pandemic. There is an irony here, however, and we must all tap into this. For months, Conservative members have been trying to get to the bottom of a scandal that includes the friends and family members of the Prime Minister. They were set up to profit from the pandemic. That's right, until caught, of course. The Prime Minister's friends at We Charity were to be given more than $500 million, while his mother, wife, and brother collected almost $500,000 in speaking fees from that same organization. At the Ethics Committee, when a Conservative motion was put forward on the table calling for an investigation into these pandemic profiteers, guess who voted with the Liberals to kill the motion? That's right, the NDP member. So if the NDP really want to stop those who are profiting from the pandemic, wouldn't they want to investigate the Prime Minister himself, who is actually benefiting his family?
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay, on a point of order.
Yes. Well, people have to tell the truth in the House, and I'm kind of glad the member is no longer the chair of the Ethics Committee, but if she was, she would know that it's actually my motion, NDP motion, to investigate that is being debated. So rather than commit the falsehoods that she's committing point after point after point, at least be truthful with the House. And maybe that's why she's no longer chair of the committee.
I think we'd probably put that under the category of debate, and we'll leave that to the House to take up in the course of the debate that's before the House. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
May I? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. While the NDP and the Liberals love to talk about giving and receiving, I wish to talk about the value of earning, because, Mr. Speaker, this is essential. I am talking about the very privilege of work, the honor of work, the dignity of work. It is an incredible thing to earn what you receive. Studies show that individuals who receive money without earning it are more likely to be depressed and less likely to feel fulfilled. Whenever we discuss permanently increasing government handouts, we must look at the potential negative ramifications, not just for our economy, but for society. Society, which is people. I am always leery when I hear politicians talk about removing burdens from the people and claiming that the government can solve all of the problems. Clinical psychologists have long said that it is important for people to take responsibility for their lives and to try to make things better. To live does include struggle, because life is hard, there are challenges. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If we choose to avoid the challenges in life and the pain that often accompanies it, then we end up living a life void of meaning and hope. Work is part of enjoying a meaningful life. It's a path to growth, to human development, and to personal fulfillment. This is just fact. I'm convinced that government programs are not the answer to getting Canada back on track. Canadians themselves are the answer. It is Canadians who have the ingenuity, the work ethic, and the ability to come up with the solutions to the problems that our country faces. Canadians must be free to use their gifts, their talents, and their abilities to further themselves, to benefit their local communities, and to get our country back in order. By enshrining policies that could disincentivize earning, like the ones that are being proposed today, we're actually robbing people of the opportunity to succeed independent of government. It would be a shame for Canada to go in that direction. Ronald Reagan said this: "The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He is the one that gets people to do the greatest things." That is true leadership, Mr. Speaker. Instead of putting the government in the position of the ultimate problem solver and exploiting the pandemic to increase government control in the lives of Canadians, I believe that it's best that we give the real opportunity to the Canadian public. Let's shift the spotlight to them, onto business owners and entrepreneurs. It's Canadians who are best able to solve problems, to generate wealth, not the government. If you compare countries that are socialist in nature with those that have a limited government and a market economy, the contrast is undeniable. The people who live in societies where the government is not depended on for essentials of life are certainly better off. Which is why earlier this week, the Conservative members of this place put forward a motion that advocated for small business owners and celebrated them as job creators and thus the backbone of Canada's economy. Now, allow me to take a moment to thank the NDP for voting in favour of our motion. I very much do appreciate them standing with us on that point. Canada already has the highest unemployment rate in the G7, and we know that small businesses provide employment for millions of Canadians from coast to coast. Canadian workers, they want small businesses to succeed. They want industry to succeed. They don't want 2 more years of government handouts. Yes, there are those who perhaps are elderly or who live with a disability who need additional assistance, and we should show care and compassion toward them. But the vast majority of Canadians would like to get back to work. They would like to have the dignity of being able to provide for themselves and their families. Only our mighty 20 million workers here in Canada can bring our country back to roaring success. Let's make that happen. Let's choose to put Canadians before government.
So we have probably time for one question and response. The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you. That was so much fun. I am going to clip that and send that home. This is the conservative worldview. A 1% tax on billionaires will create Yemen. It'll create the Soviet Union. It'll create breadlines. It's like the flat earth of the 20th century in the conservative worldview. Meanwhile, they stand up day after day demanding support for small business because they're telling us small business doesn't need government. Well, actually, they do right now. 1% tax will give you the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, we have this party over here that stands up and says, we're not doing enough to put out government money. It's not going out the door fast enough. Let all the entrepreneurs get by. They will get by, but they will need support right now. So if a 1% tax will create socialism.
Sorry, we're going to have to leave it there and leave time for a response to the honourable member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure why the NDP insist on demonizing work. When did it become a four-letter curse word? When did it become a four-letter curse word? When did it become wrong to work hard and want to earn a living for you and your family? When did that become wrong? When did it become wrong to start small, to build up, to establish a fortune? When did that become wrong? And then to use that money in many, many, many cases to benefit local communities and to benefit people who are underprivileged. This is what these businesses do. Why is the NDP going after them as if their success deserves to be punished?